is done, the second Congress is done. They don't have time to get to know their colleagues on the other side of the aisle. So the Senate watched with hesitation this whole impeachment proceeding. I've heard senators on both sides say, I don't want it to be a circus when it comes over here. I'd imagine some senators feel unhappy with the way, this trial has gone, and especially right outside the Senate chambers. They go to attack each other. I will point out during the Clinton impeachment trial, to that question of collegiality, the top Republican who controlled the Senate and top Democrat at the time got a standing ovation after the trial was done because they senators felt they kind of protected the institution from the House circusy vibe.
Yeah, we've kind of heard this critique, I think, over the last number of years, which is that a lot of these members don't live in D.C. or don't relocate their families to D.C., I should say, and therefore there is a lot less camaraderie than what you used to have. The relationships are not maybe necessarily there the way they were maybe 20, 30 years ago, and that, I think you do sometimes see that play out on Capitol Hill.
Democrats' lunch is breaking up, so we see them coming out. These caucus lunches are an opportunity for everyone to talk, sometimes air some grievances, oftentimes to get on the same page and hear from leadership what the game plan is today. Just an important and fascinating day. You see right there two presidential candidates, Amy Klobuchar and Elizabeth Warren, walking out. So frustrating for them to be here in Washington, but they have repeatedly said, we're here to do our job, we're focused on the trial. Our reporter colleagues are in Iowa watching to see how this is going to play out tonight. State of the Union is scheduled for Tuesday night back here in Washington, and then just a week later, JM, the New Hampshire primary. So we're watching the Senate chamber there, and we'll bring this to you live and uninterrupted once everyone settles down and we see the Chief Justice. A significant day in this jury trial of whether or not to acquit President Donald Trump. And the big question today, whether or not to call for witnesses. I'd like to thank Amber Phillips and thank J.M. Rieger while I have a moment. Members of the Fix team, thank you guys for being here. And thank you for watching. A reminder that you can subscribe if you're watching on YouTube or someplace else. You just click the subscribe button because it will help us bring you content, and also it helps us deliver high quality historic time and every day. What will you two be watching for and listening for? Is the big question whether or not we find out Senator Murkowski's vote in real time?
Yeah. Is there any sign, in addition to that, of Roberts understanding or coming to a decision about his role and how deferential or not deferential it's going to be? I don't know he's got much of a chance, because the way this is going to go, as Rhonda outlined, 2 hours for one side, 2 hours for the other debate. It's not like we're hearing his voice more, but is there any sign of him recognizing he could play a massive role in this trial?
And then I think also if Murkowski comes out against witnesses and documents, and or if she comes out for but Roberts refuses to break, what would then do we have acquittal today? Does this end today? And if it ends today, how long does this go? Because Schumer can offer a number of amendments after the witness resolution. Let's say if it fails, he can offer a seemingly endless number of amendments the way that they did at the start of this trial. So that could drag this on way into the night here. That'll be an interesting component, because Democrats, if this fails, there is speculation that some Democrats have kind of alluded to, Dick Durbin and Chris Murphy and others, that they want to put Republicans on the record on each of the components that they think are important in this trial. That'll be a key thing to watch today.
The question is, what will that mean for the presidential candidates, though? And of course, this is all speculation, and it is worth doing the speculation just because it does reveal that there are so many questions outstanding about not just the timeline, but what the timeline would mean about Democrats' strategy and goals, Republicans' strategies and goals. But if you're one of these Democratic presidential candidates, you want to know what to anticipate over the next week, Amber.
Yeah, could they be in trial tomorrow when the vote, maybe the amendments go late into the night, the political ones, and then tomorrow's the big day? Do they want to really have that vote on a Saturday? Do they wait till Monday? And that gives the candidates a chance to zip on out to Iowa for a precious, precious weekend before Monday.
But would they be trapped here on Monday for the actual caucus night?
That's just crazy to me that that's a real possibility.
that we're going to have at least some answers to in a couple hours here. But there are a few different ways that this really could play out. And it is a reminder that every senator, to our earlier conversation, represents a broad swath of voters, right? And their interests are all very unique at times, right? Some of these senators they wanted this thing wrapped up yesterday. Some of these senators don't mind if this drags on, so it'll be interesting.
I want to point out that we did have some news that broke today from the New York Times, and I'm going to read a headline from Philip Bump, one of our colleagues. A new Bolton revelation ties Trump to Giuliani's early efforts in Ukraine and Trump allies. The subhead is, the Senate's vote on witnesses just got more complicated. And this is all about new reporting from the New York Times that suggests that John Bolton was asked by President Trump to call the president-elect of Ukraine, Zelensky, to encourage him to meet with Rudy Giuliani. Happening in a vacuum, right? These senators are privy to the news, and they have to think about that even as they try to weigh what they're hearing inside the chamber and weigh the evidence at hand, Amber.
Once again, on the eve of an extremely critical moment in the trial, the last time was on Sunday night before Monday started this whole debate about witnesses, we have a Bolton revelation. And Libby, you asked a great question. Is Murkowski consider Bolton's book is scheduled to come out in March, or this sometimes this spring? Is this weighing on her mind? Is like, do I look foolish if there's just evidence right before me that the former national security advisor said, yep, Trump not only did this pressure campaign using taxpayer money, but he asked me to be involved in it. So that's a direct conversation that's irrefutable to a Democrat's case.
And the other thing is, Trump's lawyers this week have focused very much on this timeline that Trump was asking about Ukraine before Biden was a presidential candidate, and therefore it could not have been political. If this new Bolton reporting is correct,
which Trump has denied, we should say he denied to the New York Times this happened.
Yes, and Giuliani, I believe, has also denied. So that is very important too. So big if it's true, that does blow up even more of this kind of timeline argument that Trump's lawyers have put forward this week about it couldn't have been political because Biden at the time was not a presidential candidate when Trump first started expressing interest, if you will, in these Ukrainian affairs.
Let me ask you a question. We saw Senator Whitehouse to press President Trump's team about just what information senators should consider, and he was trying to sort of catch them in a bind of, you want us to stick to just the information that we got. Also talking about things that were reported a week ago to try to bolster your case, and what we saw the president's defense team say was, you can look at what you got as the record, and you can also look at like the public record, the trial record, the public record. So what do you do with information like this in terms of that framework of what should be allowed in, JM?
I mean, even last night we saw Politico reported, I think between the 8 and 9 p.m. hour, that Biden in 1999 had written this memo saying, you don't need witnesses, we can rush to acquit this. I'm heavily paraphrasing the Politico's reporting. And a couple hours later, it was read into the Senate record, right, as a question. That's the completely fair point on Senator Whitehouse's part, right, which is, at what point do you kind of draw the line, cut off what evidence can be admitted, what point do you not allow it to be admitted?
And are you being hypocritical if you're saying we shouldn't be considering information pertinent to this case, but you're sort of cherry-picking what we should think about?
Right. And we've also, a lot of the Bolton questions that have happened, I think it's fair to say that at least is somewhat due to this kind of New York Times reporting on this alleged manuscript and what it allegedly says. So this is happening kind of across the aisle, if you will, but it's a very fair point to say, okay, and we get even more outside evidence, right, by calling additional witnesses and maybe subpoenaing additional documents here.
Well, this is a debate they're about to have, what we're having on the Senate floor pretty soon, because they get 2 hours each side, and Adam Schiff in particular has been extremely nimble at folding in news outside the chamber into his arguments.
So So we're watching to wait for the Senate to gavel in here and the Chief Justice to head up to the seat. We expect Chaplain Barry Black to do a prayer, as always, in the morning. It's been so revealing and interesting to listen to how the chaplain introduces the day and calls upon in the prayer, he renews, right? He does invoke what senators are weighing, what they're thinking about, and what they are wrestling with. And so even hearing the prayer has been revealing about how senators might be reflecting on their responsibility and their role. So as we watch this get underway, there is a real question as to whether or not this could be wrapped up tonight.